What does the term inner child mean? How do you begin to heal the wounds of your inner child? Why do I even need to do this? Why is this something that could be important to your journey? That's what I'm going to answer in this video and a few more other things I'm going to add in. But for those of you that don't know me, my name is Dr. Vanessa Milagros, and I am a licensed mental health professional. I make videos on here about different mental health topics, so if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe and comment any questions you have down below. Let's get started. All right, so what is an inner child? And what does the term inner child wounds mean? Let's start there. So, the term inner child is supposed to be a depiction of the younger version of yourself. Of course, this is metaphorically, and it help you work through the healing journey within your life as an adult to be able to look back and remember or reflect on the younger version of you growing up. So, an inner child, that term really is a depiction of the emotions, the experiences that you had as a child, the memories, and also the hurts or the wounds that you've experienced throughout your childhood. So, if your needs weren't met as a child, and as children, we have certain needs, right? I want you to think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? There are certain things that individuals need more of, especially when they are children. Just look at any child in your life, whether that's a niece, nephew, your own children. There are things that they cannot help themselves with that you as an adult need to do that for them. If not, they will die. If you don't nourish a child, the child will not survive. If you don't give a child the love and care that they need, they may survive on this earth because you're still feeding them and giving them water, right? However, if you don't meet their emotional needs for connection, then they have other things that occur as adults that they have to actually work through, or things that they lack because they didn't have their emotional needs met. And for today's video, we're going to focus on that, the emotional wounds, when we're talking about inner child. We're not talking about things like going without a roof over your head or going without food, right? That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the emotional needs. Now, I do want to preface it and say there are things that go hand in hand, right? And there are different experiences that we can't control. Sometimes our parents couldn't control, right? If you grew up in poverty or in a war zone, there are totally different things that we just cannot control, and we have to learn how to survive through. When I say emotional connection, sometimes our parents didn't ever receive that. And so they cannot give to us what they do not have, right? So there are different situations for different people, is what I'm trying to point out. But for today's video, we're going to talk and focus on you as an adult. If you're wondering, what is this inner child thing, and what do the wounds and my experiences have to do with it, and how can this even help me? That's what I'm focusing on today. So, for instance, if as a child your emotional needs were not met, or you experienced abuse, neglect, right? As an adult, you may tend to struggle with things like self worth, your self image, learning how to set healthy boundaries with those around you now as an adult. Or you may also really struggle with learning how to emotionally regulate yourself. So you have an experience big emotions and you don't know what to do with them. A lot of times we see this through angry outbursts. You see adults having full blown tantrums. Part of that could be because they have not learned how to emotionally regulate as adults. And you're just like, what is happening? My 5-year old just did that the other day, but I understand that. I don't understand what's happening with you. This could be part of it. And you may recognize that in yourself too, of listen, I don't know how to handle sadness, so I just don't even go there. And if I feel myself going there, I will shut that down so quickly. It comes out in different forms, right? Now, what healing your inner child does is it helps you to actually recognize that you are deserving of things that you missed out on, and that you don't have to justify that by saying, well, look, my life is good now, or well, people have it worse. No. You can recognize that there are still things that you went without and learn how to give those to yourself as an adult, because you are deserving of it, and you do not have to continue to impact those around you now as an adult that love and care for you and support you and just want to see you do better. They don't want to see you continue to hurt. And we may not say, oh, I'm hurting from the past, but we show it. And we may not share in detail with those that love us about our experiences, but they see it through the outbursts and through the behaviors, even as an adult. So it just depends on if that's something that you want to work on or not. Let's dive a little bit deeper into understanding these childhood wounds specifically. So, your experiences as a child and young adult shapes how you view the world now as an adult. It also impacts your subconscious beliefs. So, here are a few examples of what this looks like, what some of these wounds may look like. So, the first is an abandonment wound, and this can display in adulthood in a few ways. So, there could be a fear of being left behind that you have, clinginess. So, whether that's not necessarily clinging as far as physical is concerned, but that could be a sense of not wanting someone to leave or not wanting to be alone, always wanting to have someone there, maybe always needing background noise because it's too quiet here and that's not comfortable for me. A lot of times within relationships, this displays as an anxious attachment style within your relationship. And if you want to learn more about those, so the attachment styles, I have a video right here explaining more about them. Rejection wounds. Now, this can display in adulthood in a few ways as well, through people pleasing, fear of failure. So, either not stepping out and doing different things because you're afraid that you're not going to do well, or stepping out and the first sign of possible failure, you're done. This could be in relationships as well. And we see this through avoidant attachment styles within relationships. This can also be displayed through avoidance of emotional vulnerability. So, being able to understand your emotions, yes, but also convey your emotions to others in a healthy format through communication and recognizing that just because I feel rejected doesn't mean that person is rejecting me, right? Instead, a lot of times you may feel like you're being rejected and you act out on that. Next is a neglect wound. So, this may bring about feelings of unworthiness. Maybe you struggle to ask for help because that could make me seem weak if I have to ask for help. No, I need to just figure it out on my own. This could also be displayed through self-sabotaging behaviors. So, you self-sabotage maybe relationships, careers, opportunities, all for the wound of neglect. I don't want to feel neglect because I experienced emotional neglect as a child. And I actually have a full video on emotional neglect and how that impacts us within adulthood. So check that out right here because I know I'm biased, but I think it's pretty good. And the last is a guilt wound. And as a mental health professional, I see this quite a bit. So within this wound, you may feel a sense of responsibility for others and their happiness or their other emotions that they experience. And you may take it upon yourself to do things that they haven't even asked you to do or have required you to do. But in your mind, you have already decided you are responsible for their emotional state. And so if they are not as happy today, or if they are more sad today, or if their mood has shifted, you don't even have to be asked. You just go into action. And this doesn't even necessarily have to do with something they did. This could be something stemming back again to childhood wounds. Maybe you did have the responsibility placed on you for the well-being of your, for example, your parents' emotional state. So if you knew as soon as you heard that garage door go up, your whole shift in mood in the house or even just within yourself changed because you did not know how that individual was going to come through the door, through the garage, that's a perfect example of making yourself responsible for somebody else's emotional state. Because just because you're upset or angry or have had a bad day or sad, that doesn't make it my responsibility to fix you, especially if you're an adult who should be able to emotionally regulate. And even if you can't, that's not my job as a child, right? But of course, in that state, you are not equipped to recognize those things. So a lot of these things we learn in adulthood through therapy. And it may seem like this is something that I should have been taught, but how do you teach this, right? This is part of the reason why I make videos like this, because a lot of us didn't have that displayed to us, not even necessarily taught. We didn't even see that growing up. And so being able to recognize that there's a difference between unhealthy and healthy dynamics, huge, at least for me. One last thing I'll say about this is if you and your emotions were dismissed, maybe your experiences were dismissed. Maybe you started to get excited about something and you were immediately shut down. Oh, stop acting like that. Oh, you're doing too much. Or when you would share things as a child, I'm talking about, and even in young adulthood, you would share things maybe that you were excited about and it was dismissed. Oh, you're doing too much, or that's not really that big of a deal, or well, good luck with that. Or if you weren't even heard, acknowledged. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Your parent was working on something else, or your older siblings were, or whatever the case and dynamic was for you, if by the people you admired, looked up to growing up, you were dismissed, unheard, unseen, even if you felt like you were invisible despite being in a room full of people, those are things that impact us in adulthood that we need to take a look at. So I wanted to make sure I said that because sometimes we forget that aspect. So, how do you actually start to work on healing these childhood wounds? One, I'm always going to say therapy because that's going to be super important. And it's going to be helpful to speak with someone who is biased, who didn't maybe grow up with you, who isn't a close friend, who can look at things objectively, who you can speak to openly, have a trust that you build over time with, that can help you work on the different wounds and how to heal from them and be better for them, not just for those around you now, but for yourself first, because you are important and worthy of that healing too. So, number one, it's important to acknowledge your wounds. And that's difficult because you are going, and you may have already done this, but as soon as you start to acknowledge one, or maybe a memory comes back of one, or a recollection, and you're like, oh, maybe that could be a childhood wound for me that I have, you usually will meet it with an excuse. Oh, well, it's really not that serious. It's not that important. We're grown. We don't do that anymore. People have it worse. If you're struggling with this, I want you to ask one of your support systems, maybe two, someone who actually does know you, is a healthy person in your life, and knows how to constructively and maybe even gently let you know about yourself, right? Or call you out. I want you to ask them, is there something within my behavior that you see that maybe could be contributing to childhood wounds, or maybe something that you see within our friendship that maybe I could work on, right? That could start a whole nother conversation, especially if it's someone that's healthy in your life, trustworthy, and that you value their opinions, right? Start there. But acknowledging your wounds is going to be really helpful. Even if you just rewind this video back and go back to the different points and the different wounds that I went through with you. Do you relate to any of those? And if so, explore that a little bit more. That could be one of the wounds that is showing up for you now in adulthood. Number two, reparent yourself. Now, if you've been in a parental role all your life, this is not going to be as easy as you think it's going to be. So some people are like, oh, I've been the parent since I was 5, my whole life. So reparenting myself should be not a struggle. Incorrect. You've had to parent other people, sometimes even grown people. That doesn't mean that you've given any of that to yourself. And this, a lot of individuals find really difficult to do because that means you actually learn, you have to actually encourage yourself and work on forgiving yourself, acknowledging your needs, not easy to do, acknowledging the areas in which you need to love yourself, or maybe be understanding and empathetic to you and your experiences and your needs. And that is very difficult for a lot of individuals to do for themselves. You probably are really good at doing it for other people and can turn it on and are genuine about it. But for you, towards you, that's a totally different struggle. So you have to learn how to reparent yourself and provide yourself with a lot of the things that you did not receive. Where do I start? With this video, learning how to do this. If you want to take it a step further, read books on emotional intelligence, starting there. Read books on self-forgiveness, starting there. Wherever your area is, start there. See, what tends to happen is it almost skips a generation. Walk with me here. So we didn't get within our childhood a lot of the things, or maybe just some things that we definitely could have used in adulthood, right? Maybe we missed out on certain things. Maybe we experienced certain traumas and neglects and hurts and things that should not be experienced by children, right? Or young adults. However, what do we tend to do? We tend to make an internal promise of, well, this will never happen to my child. Or when I'm a parent, I will never allow my child to go without or experience this, or whatever the case is, right? You make an oath to yourself, and you probably have kept that oath or will keep that oath. But it skips a generation because we don't actually take the time to say, but let me do it to me first. Let me give myself those things. Because if I didn't get this as a child, but I'm going to give it to somebody else. And that's wonderful. What about you? This now leads me to my third point, is to practice self-compassion. There are things that we should know in adulthood, such as how to regulate our emotions. A lot of us don't know how to do that. If you start by acknowledging your wounds from childhood, then learn to reparent yourself, a part of that is going to require you to display compassion to yourself. And this can look like a few things, but it can appear as displaying kindness to yourself instead of criticism and judgment all the time. We have to learn how to give ourselves what we freely give to others first. Because how do you fill someone else from an empty cup? You can't. You don't. You're going to show up empty. Start with yourself first. And number 4, you can actually do exercises to help nurture your inner child. Before you start, what does she mean? What is she talking about? There are different ways. You can do this in therapy too, but you can also do this with yourself as well. So you can imagine yourself comforting and nurturing your younger self. So you can do this in a few ways. You can close your eyes, picture yourself at that younger age, and giving yourself a hug, whether that's physically doing it in the present and picturing it in the past, or whether that's just sitting there and picturing yourself doing that. Now, is it going to heal you and magically take away all of the negative feelings and fix everything? No, but it helps you to show compassion to your younger self, to understand that, yes, I am in an adult body, right? But there are things that I can still heal and work on and love that I can give myself as a young child growing up, a lost child growing up, trying to understand and navigate through this world. The next thing I want you to work on is learning how to set healthy boundaries. There are different ways that we can set boundaries, right? But setting boundaries is allowing yourself to say, this is the line, and you don't get to cross further than the line allows. And this could be when it comes to yourself and how you protect your emotional well-being, right? So if someone's always causing you to walk out of those conversations or those meetings and feeling off, feeling anxious, feeling guilty, feeling whatever it is, there comes a time where, yes, you have to take responsibility for you and your behavior. But if you consistently feel a negative way after leaving a conversation or meeting with somebody, that is a clear sign that something needs to change. Because if you're changing my emotional state, my mental health, my state of mind, every time I see you, I'm not expecting you to set up any boundaries. I have to expect myself to set up boundaries. And this will help you start to break the cycle of negative, unhealthy patterns. So learning how to say no, learning how to not allow the guilt to overcome you, and recognizing that you can feel guilt and still act in ways that are healthy for you and your family, right? And the life that you want to create, just by saying, here's the line. I will not allow you to continue to go past this line. It is okay to say no to people, places, things, situations that take you out of your element of peace and that do not help bring more positivity, joy, calmness, assurance, and healthy output into your life. I want to leave you with a few takeaways. The first one is that healing is an ongoing process. It is not a one and done kind of deal. It's ongoing. There are things that you start to work on and you overcome and you say, wow, okay, I'm healed. Wonderful. Then there's something else that pops up and you're like, oh, I didn't know you were there. Now I need to work on this, right? It's an ongoing process. There's no finish line to healing. Number 2, I want you to actually work on seeking support outside of yourself. You cannot expect yourself to fix yourself alone. You need support. You need good friends. You need healthy people around you. Professionals, if you don't want to go to a therapist yet, you're like, I'm not there yet. Fine, start with a mentor. Read books on that topic. Listen to podcasts within that area. Educate yourself by watching more videos on YouTube about the topics that you're interested in. But you can always start somewhere. And lastly is to remember that you are worthy of healing. You are worthy of healthy dynamics and relationships and friendships and a life that is happy. Even if you missed out on certain things, you are deserving of giving yourself those things, of allowing other people to love you in ways that you want to be loved. So I hope this video was helpful. Please consider subscribing, liking, and leave me a comment down below of any questions you have, or maybe you want me to make a video on a different topic. Let me know in the comments below. Have a great day. Take care.